Listen, the election cycle in America is nothing but a mechanism for what you can call the campaign industrial complex, whereby billions upon billions of dollars of contributions, your money, are funneled into the private sector. I mean, when you donate to a politician or you donate to a candidate, where do you think that money goes? It goes directly to business. You're not doing anything but increase the revenue streams of consultancies, ad agencies, analytics firms, PR firms, media companies, social media companies, digital marketing agencies, events coordinators, on and on. This is nothing but the public providing basically an economic stimulus package to unproductive industries. It's a wealth transfer that you yourselves are participating in.
Welcome once again to Afripost, a channel where we focus on enlightening our people on our history and the leaders who helped shape Black history to date. In today's video, you are going to watch this leader talk about Africans and the Black people across the world and especially in the United States. Let's watch.
I mean, if you wonder why American society is so divided, I mean divided in so many ways. It isn't just that the divides are deep, it's that the divides are so many. Black and white, race against race, advocates of this issue against opponents of this issue, even men against women and women against men. There isn't a single category within that society that doesn't have some corresponding nemesis. It's just divide and conquer, playing out domestically. And Democrats and Republicans is just another one of these divisions, because the country has been conquered by corporate economic imperialists. Look, I don't care who you vote for in November, because power doesn't care who you vote for in November. I've said it before. If you imagine that unelected power of the private sector is going to entrust the public with deciding how things are going to be run and who's going to run things, then you're living in a fantasy. It's absurd. America has subverted, sabotaged, and strangled democracies all around the world. They've been interfering with, tampering with, rigging elections across the globe for decades, from Haiti to Honduras, from Italy to Iran, from Syria to South Africa. They've toppled governments, assassinated elected officials, fixed elections, bribed and bullied and bulldozed democracies on every continent for a century. They don't think that any population in any country in the world can be trusted to elect leaders who will safeguard the interests of the American elite. So what makes you think that they're going to trust you with that power? They rig elections and install whoever they want in country after country, but somehow you think that they're not going to do that in your country. Why, how naive can you be? Listen, the election cycle in America is nothing but a mechanism for what you can call the campaign industrial complex, whereby billions upon billions of dollars of contributions, your money, are funneled into the private sector. I mean, when you donate to a politician or you donate to a candidate, where do you think that money goes? It goes directly to business. You're not doing anything but increase the revenue streams of consultancies, ad agencies, analytics firms, PR firms, media companies, social media companies, digital marketing agencies, events coordinators, on and on. This is nothing but the public providing basically an economic stimulus package to unproductive industries. It's a wealth transfer that you yourselves are participating in. You're literally just donating money to the private sector and getting nothing in return. Getting nothing in return except that you get to watch the most expensive fan fiction movie about democracy ever produced. I mean, look at the Democrats. Kamala Harris was just appointed as the nominee. She wasn't voted for. This is straight up succession, not election. There were no primaries. She hasn't had to outline her policy platform, and no one needs her to do that. All she has to do is to not be Donald Trump. This is the logic of demonization versus policy debate as a campaign strategy. No candidate has to win your approval as long as the whole election is framed in the lesser of two evils scenario. And what's the point of that? To make the pre-programmed win seem plausible, that's all. And to not leave any opening for dissent to manifest that might make the win seem implausible. Because, for instance, if voters actually have demands of this candidate or that candidate, and the candidate fails to address those demands, then it could cast doubt upon their eventual victory. And inevitably, if a candidate does address voter demands, well, that will always end up alienating some other faction of voters. So we don't talk about issues. We don't talk about how to deal with issues. We just rally behind our party's candidate in lockstep, because the other party's candidate is literally the devil incarnate. When you're operating in the lesser of two evils framework, you're always going to have decidedly low expectations of your chosen candidate, and that's perfect when the election is already fraudulent in the first place. So this uncomplicates the rigging process. Yes, I said rigging, and don't think for a second, don't you imagine that that's a conspiracy theory, that the U.S. rigs elections. But between 1946 and 2000, America is documented to have interfered with, tampered with, malignly influenced, or outright rigged at least 88 elections from Europe to Latin America to Asia to Africa. So again, if you think that they'll do this everywhere else, but your so-called democracy is pristine, I would have to ask you why you think so. Why would it be more important to the power structure to control the outcome of an election in, say, Guyana, than it would be for them to control the outcome of an election in the United States of America? Because yes, Guyana is one of the countries where America rigged elections in the past. I'm telling you, I don't care who you vote for, because power doesn't care who you vote for, because the outcome is not determined by you. You know, Biden stepped aside because his pre-programmed victory could never be convincing. But look, Biden himself, the fact of Biden, a man who is literally in late-stage senility, a man who is visibly disintegrating before our eyes, the very fact that he was not only president, but was absolutely going to be run for another term, despite being a cadaver on strings, that should let you know that power does not reside in that office. Politicians serve two functions. The first is to distract you with the performance of democratic government, and the second is to be effigies that can be burned to satisfy public anger when the policies dictated by the private sector impose misery on the population. So when an American asks me who should they vote for, or when they say that this one is better than that one, or at least not as bad as that one, and what do I think, and so on and so on and so on, well, you may as well be asking me about which Marvel superhero is better than the other, because you're not talking to me about figures who have any real significance with regards to policy. You're not talking to me about figures who actually exert any control over anything. You're not talking about the real existing power structure. You're asking me to give you an opinion about a fictional scenario in which your government wields independent power. As long as you're fixated on this charade, there's no danger whatsoever of you ever having any impact on policy. You're just facilitating and collaborating with the divide and conquer tactics of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. And I don't know how you can be so propagandized, to be honest. I don't know how you can be so propagandized that you can't even notice that actually your own media does tell you every day that the government is not in charge. I mean, how many times have you read, or how many times have you heard in the media, the market will decide? We'll have to see what the market does, and so on. But when they say the market, they don't mean you and I. They mean big business, multinational corporations, asset managers, stock market whales, not voters, not citizens, not Democrats, and not Republicans. You live in an oligarchy, and your so-called democracy is only performed as a distraction to keep you from noticing that fact. Now, for this election in the U.S., as I've said, Harris and Trump are just mascots representing two different factions of the OCGFC. And it's going to be just like what happened in Venezuela. The only way that Trump can win is by trying to out-rig the election rigging of the Democrats. But the Democrats are the incumbents, like Maduro was. So they have the advantage of overseeing the succession, and Harris is likely to win. The only thing that Trump can do is to try to boost his own popularity to the point that Harris's pre-programmed victory looks less plausible. But like I said before, it's not musical chairs where both candidates are walking in circles around the chair until the music stops, and then they have to race for the seat. Kamala is already in the seat, just like Maduro, and it's harder to get someone out of that seat than it is to just sit in it. So it looks like the neocons will probably stay in the White House. And that just means that the real battle between the military-industrial complex OCGFC and the global-oriented OCGFC, that battle is just going to go on a while longer. But if you're fool enough to think that you have to drop everything in order to ensure that Kamala Harris will win and Trump will lose, well, then you're literally like someone who can watch those old Roadrunner cartoons and still get worried and anxious about whether or not the coyote is going to catch him. I mean, I know it's important for you to think that you have some kind of control, but the truth is, the reality is, you're not writing this story. And you're not writing how this story goes. And as long as you think that you are writing how this story goes or participating in it in any way whatsoever, then that just ensures that you will always be nothing but a spectator. Unless and until you redirect your activism towards the private sector, and I mean organize and mobilize with the understanding that, for example, corporations are political entities. So treat them as such, deal with them as such, impose expectations and demands upon them as such. Unless and until you do that, all your get out the vote initiatives, all your campaigning, all your voting will never do anything for social and political change except to ensure that it won't happen. Boeing, for example, just used your government to make around $20 billion. Boeing, Raytheon, and all the other merchants of death and destruction. They just got $20 billion of your money to keep the genocide going in Gaza. That's their policy. Zionism is their policy. Genocide is their policy, and they're doing it for money. And they give almost evenly to the Democrats as they do to the Republicans, except they give slightly more to the Democrats. And it's almost even between what they give to Kamala Harris and to Donald Trump. They contributed a bit more to Harris. I shouldn't actually say contribute, I should say invest, because they give that money as an investment from which they expect astronomical returns, which they will get. These are the entities that control your policy. It's not your ballot, it's their billions. Your government is captured, and your country has been captured, and power and decision-making has been transferred from the public sector to the private sector. Your laws and your policies are written by corporate lawyers, not by congressmen. You know, your democracy has actually become like the British monarchy. It's just an empty tradition. You know, you go out to vote the same way that British people will go out and line the streets just to watch the king pass by on a horse and carriage. It's just a nod to the lore and heritage of your society. It's a ritual that has no real significance beyond the psychological and the emotional. It's a collective, society-wide, self-soothing gesture. America is a corporate authoritarian system cosplaying as a democracy. And everybody around the world sees you. You know, you people who are campaigning for Trump or campaigning for Harris, everyone around the world sees you as someone who's like at a cosplay event and dressed up like Iron Man, but who actually thinks that the buttons on his costume work. We have to elect Trump, or the meteor is going to destroy the earth. We have to elect Harris, or multi-dimensional aliens will kill us all. You're really invested in the fantasy storyline. But nobody in the world thinks that your democracy exists except for you. Because we know all too well what your democracy looks like when you export it to us. And you have the same one that you sent us, which means that you don't have one either. Look, you are not constituents of politicians, you're constituents of companies, and you need to organize yourselves along these lines. Democratize private sector power. At some point, your activism and your strategy has to actually be informed by the real existing power dynamics in your society, not just by the official version of the power structure that they taught you in civics class. Until you do that, I'm telling you that the harder you work for this party or the harder you work for that party, well, you're doing nothing but fortify and reinforce your own disenfranchisement and your own irrelevance.
Now, that is such an educative piece. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. You can also support us by buying us a cup of coffee. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.